It was a killing that shocked the world.
The man who might have been
North Korea's leader.
Investigators in Malaysia have arrested a suspected female secret agent in this James Bond-style hit.
This is one of the most bizarre murder plots in decades.
The new details in that bizarre assassination of North Korean leader.
On February 13, 2017, at Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia, hundreds of people move through the terminal. Nothing feels unusual. Then a man enters the building. But this man is unlike anyone else in the terminal. He was once expected to become North Korea's next leader. Now, he's traveling under a false identity. A few steps away, two young women blend into the crowd. They believe they're about to take part in another prank. Within minutes, one of the strangest political assassinations in modern history will begin. Born in 1971, Kim Jong-nam was the eldest son of Kim Jong-il and the grandson of Kim Il-sung. He belonged to the bloodline that ruled North Korea. Most North Koreans never saw him, never heard him speak. Many didn't even know he existed. But inside the regime, everyone knew who he was. He was the firstborn son. And in a family dynasty, that mattered. For years, many believed Kim Jong-nam was the future of North Korea. If power stayed within the family, he seemed like the obvious choice. He had the name, he had the bloodline, and he had the position. At least, that's how it looked. But there was something unusual about Kim Jong-nam. While most North Koreans lived cut off from the outside world, he spent years abroad. He studied in Moscow. Later, he attended school in Switzerland. He saw a very different world from the one his family ruled. A world of open cities, foreign cultures, and ideas that rarely crossed North Korea's borders. Few people realized it at the time, but that difference would matter. By the late 1990s, Kim Jong-nam seemed to have everything working in his favor. He was the eldest son. He lived a life of privilege beyond the reach of ordinary citizens, and to many outside observers, he looked like the heir to one of the world's most secretive regimes. His future seemed clear, but history rarely follows the path people expect. In 21, a trip to Japan would change everything. A trip that began with a fake passport and ended with a visit to Disneyland. By 21, Kim Jong-nam seemed untouchable. He was the eldest son of Kim Jong-il, the man many believed would one day inherit North Korea. His future appeared clear, then everything changed. In May 21, Kim Jong-nam arrived at Japan's Narita International Airport. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but there was a problem. The passport he carried wasn't his. Japanese authorities quickly discovered that the document was a forged Dominican Republic passport. Instead of entering the country, Kim Jong-nam was detained. News of the arrest spread quickly. The future heir to North Korea had been cuffed traveling under a false identity. Then came the explanation. According to his own account, he wanted to visit Tokyo Disneyland. The story sounded almost unbelievable. One of the most protected members of North Korea's ruling family had traveled across the world using a fake passport to visit a theme park. The incident quickly became international news. Newspapers across the world picked up the story. The embarrassment reached far beyond Kim Jong-nam himself. It reached his father. According to reports, Kim Jong-il later cancelled a planned trip to China as the scandal continued to attract attention. For years, many people pointed to Disneyland as the moment Kim Jong-nam lost his future, the moment the heir apparent fell from favor. But the story may not have been that simple. Kim Jong-nam had spent years outside North Korea, and over time, some of his views appeared to change. In later years, Kim Jong-nam spoke publicly about reform. He suggested North Korea could learn from China's economic changes. He questioned whether isolation was the right path. Those comments may not sound controversial outside North Korea. Inside the system built on control, they were different, and differences can become dangerous. At the same time, power inside the Kim family was shifting. New figures were gaining influence. The position that once seemed secure no longer looked guaranteed. So was Disneyland really the reason Kim Jong-nam fell from favor? Or did the incident simply expose a decline that had already begun? No one outside the inner circle knows for certain. What's clear is that after 21, the image of Kim Jong-nam as North Korea's future leader began to fade. He was moving away from power, but someone else was moving toward it. A younger brother who at the time attracted little attention outside North Korea, Kim Jong Un. In 28, the clock started ticking. Kim Jong-il's health was failing. For the regime, that created a problem that could no longer be ignored. Who would rule North Korea next? By this point, Kim Jong-nam was spending much of his time outside the country. The man once seen as the future leader was no longer at the center of power. Attention was shifting elsewhere, toward the younger son few outsiders knew much about, Kim Jong-un. Unlike Kim Jong-nam, he rarely appeared in public. Most people outside North Korea had never heard of him, but behind the scenes, his rise was already underway. As Kim Jong-il's health declined, preparations accelerated. Officials began rallying around the younger son. The regime started preparing for a new leader, and with every passing year, the gap between the two brothers grew wider. One spent much of his time abroad. The other was being prepared to lead the country. One occasionally spoke about reform and economic change. The other was moving deeper into the heart of the system. One was moving away from power. The other was moving toward it. By 29, the dynasty had made its choice. It wasn't Kim Jong-nam. When Kim Jong-il died in December 2011, the transition happened quickly. Kim Jong-un became North Korea's new leader, the third generation of the Kim family to rule the country. For Kim Jong-nam, the question that had followed him for years was finally answered. He would never inherit his father's position. The future many had imagined for him now belonged to someone else. But losing power did not make him irrelevant. There was one thing he couldn't lose: his bloodline. And in North Korea, bloodlines can be powerful. Sometimes they can also be dangerous. Kim Jong-nam never became North Korea's leader. Instead, he disappeared from the center of power. By the early 2010, he was spending most of his time outside the country, while Kim Jong-un ruled from Pyongyang. Kim Jong-nam built a life abroad. He moved between places like Macau, Beijing, and Singapore. He was far from the system his family controlled. At least, that's how it seemed. Despite the distance, Kim Jong-nam did not completely disappear. For years, he maintained connections to North Korea and continued traveling throughout Asia. Unlike most members of the ruling family, he was sometimes seen in public. He traveled under his own name and occasionally spoke with journalists. For a member of North Korea's dynasty, that was unusual. Years earlier, he had studied abroad and seen a very different world. Over time, his views appeared to change. He spoke about economic reform, and in some interviews, he questioned the idea of power passing from one generation of the Kim family to the next. But he wasn't trying to overthrow the regime. There is no evidence that he was. In fact, he repeatedly said he had no desire to rule the country. But there was one thing he could never escape: his name. Kim Jong-nam was the eldest son of Kim Jong-il, a direct member of the bloodline that ruled North Korea. And in a system built around loyalty, symbolism, and family rule, that still mattered. By the mid-2010, Kim Jong-nam seemed far removed from politics. He lived abroad, he held no official position, and he rarely appeared in public life. Yet, he still mattered. But why? By the mid-2010, Kim Jong-nam seemed far removed from the struggle for power. He lived outside North Korea, he held no official position, and he repeatedly said he had no interest in ruling the country. On the surface, there was little reason to see him as a threat, but appearances can be misleading. The first reason was something he could never change: his bloodline. Long before Kim Jong-un became North Korea's leader, many people had expected Kim Jong-nam to inherit the dynasty. That future never happened, but the history remained. He was still part of the family that ruled North Korea. Then there were his views. Unlike most members of the Kim family, Kim Jong-nam occasionally spoke with journalists. But this is unusual because it came from a Kim. There was another factor. Kim Jong-nam spent years living outside North Korea. His international movements and foreign connections led to occasional speculation that he was quietly linked to intelligence services or being watched by them. No public evidence has ever proven such claims, but the rumors added to the mystery surrounding him. Then there was China. For years, Kim Jong-nam lived under Beijing's protection. China was North Korea's most important ally and largest economic partner. Some analysts believe Chinese leaders may have viewed Kim Jong-nam as a useful option if North Korea ever faced a major political crisis. There is no evidence that Kim Jong-nam was involved in any plan to challenge his half-brother, nor is there evidence that China intended to place him in power, but the possibility alone attracted attention. If North Korea ever became unstable, Kim Jong-nam represented something rare, a member of the ruling bloodline, a man with international experience, and someone already living under China's protection. There were also signs that he had not been completely forgotten inside North Korea. In 2009, security agents reportedly raided a villa associated with Kim Jong-nam and people connected to him in Pyongyang. Some reports suggested the operation was intended to weaken what remained of his network as Kim Jong-un's rise accelerated. The true reason remains unclear, but it suggested one thing. Even after years abroad, people were still paying attention to him. Perhaps that was the real issue. Whether Kim Jong-nam posed a genuine threat or merely a symbolic one remains impossible to know. What's clear is that he occupied a unique position, too close to power to be ignored, too far away to be fully controlled. Despite years of exile, his name still carried weight. On the morning of February 13, 2017, someone had clearly decided that Kim Jong-nam remained important enough to watch. As he walked through Kuala Lumpur International Airport under the name Kim Chol, a carefully planned operation was already moving into place. The airport is crowded. Families drag suitcases across the floor. Flight announcements echo through the terminal. Travelers rush toward departure gates. Nothing feels unusual. But somewhere in the crowd, several people are watching the same man. Within the next few minutes, he will become the target of one of the strangest assassinations in modern history, and the people chosen to carry it out don't even realize what they are part of. Months earlier, two young women were trying to build better lives for themselves. One was Siti, an Indonesian woman living in Malaysia. The other was Dawn, a young Vietnamese woman searching for work and new opportunities. Neither woman had any connection to espionage. Neither had any connection to North Korea's ruling dynasty. At least, not yet. In separate places and at different times, both women were approached by men who presented themselves as entertainment producers. The job sounded simple, a hidden camera prank show. Approach strangers, do something harmless, walk away and get paid. One day, a woman is asked to touch a stranger's face. She does it, nothing happens. The organizers smile, they hand her money. A few days later, she does it again, then again, and again. The routine never changes. Approach, touch, leave. At first, it looks harmless, but investigators would later reach a different conclusion. Someone was training them. By February 2017, the rehearsals were over. The operation was ready. But there was one thing the women allegedly didn't know. The prank show wasn't real. According to investigators, the men behind it were North Korean operatives using false identities. The rehearsals had never been about television. They had been preparation. Then came February 13, 2017, the crowded terminal of Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Under the name Kim Chol, Kim Jong-nam enters the building. He moves through the terminal like any other traveler. Nothing about him attracts attention. But he's not alone. Somewhere nearby, members of the operation are already in position. Someone watch where he goes, others wait for the signal. As Kim Jong-nam approaches a self-check-in area, the two women begin moving toward him. Siti approaches from behind. She quickly places her hands across Kim Jong-nam's face. Almost immediately, Dan moves in and applies another substance. The entire encounter lasts only seconds. No weapons, no struggle, no shouting. Just a brief, confusing interaction in the middle of a busy airport. Then the women do exactly what they had practiced, just as they had done countless times before. Most people have no idea anything unusual has happened. The women disappear into the crowd. Other members of the operation begin leaving the area. For a brief moment, everything appears to have gone according to plan. But something is wrong. Kim Jong-nam begins looking for help. The substance placed on his face wasn't part of a prank. And within minutes, one of the most bizarre political assassinations of the 21st century is unfolding in front of hundreds of witnesses. At first, Kim Jong-nam appears confused. The encounter lasted only seconds. Two strangers approached him, touched his face, then walked away. It feels less like an attack and more like a bizarre prank. But within minutes, something is wrong. Kim Jong-nam approaches airport staff and reports that two women have smeared the substance across his face. As employees try to understand what happened, his condition begins to worsen. Medical assistance is requested. Meanwhile, the two women are already leaving the scene. Other members of the operation are moving away as well. For them, the mission appears complete. For Kim Jong-nam, it's only the beginning. With each passing minute, things are getting worse. Nobody around him knows why. Nobody realizes that one of the world's deadliest chemical weapons may have just been used inside a civilian airport. Hours later, investigators announce a shocking discovery. Tests identify the X-nerve agent on Kim Jong-nam's face. Malaysian investigators immediately began reviewing airport surveillance footage. The cameras quickly revealed the two women who had approached Kim Jong-nam. Within days, Siti and Dawn were arrested. At first, the case appeared simple. The women had approached the victim. The women had touched his face. The women had been captured on camera. But then, they told investigators something unexpected. They claimed they believed they were taking part in a prank show. The explanation sounded difficult to believe, and there was another problem. The X-nerve agent had been identified in connection with the attack, so why were the two women still alive? Investigators later suggested the operation may have used separate chemical components that became deadly only after being combined on Kim Jong-nam's face. If true, the women may never have fully understood what they were holding. As investigators dug deeper, the story became even stranger. Evidence pointed beyond the two women. Several North Korean suspects had been in Malaysia around the time of the attack. Some left the country only hours after. The attack no longer looked like the actions of two individuals. It appeared to be a coordinated operation, and that raised a far bigger question. If the women were only part of the plan, who was really behind it? By the time medical staff reached him, Kim Jong-nam's condition was getting worse. The attack had lasted only seconds. The consequences were irreversible. On February 13, 2017, Kim Jong-nam died in Malaysia at the age of 45. For most people, the story looked straightforward. A man had been assassinated in an airport. But Kim Jong-nam wasn't just another victim. Years earlier, many had believed he would one day lead North Korea. Instead, he spent much of his life watching power move to someone else, his younger half-brother, Kim Jong Un. Kim Jong-nam never returned to challenge the regime. He never built a political movement. He repeatedly said he had no desire to rule. Yet, one thing never changed: his bloodline. He remained the eldest son of Kim Jong-il, a member of the family that ruled North Korea. And in a dynasty built on power, loyalty, and control, that could be enough. North Korea denied involvement in the assassination. No court ever proved who ordered it. But the questions never disappeared. Was Kim Jong-nam considered as a genuine threat, a symbolic rival, or simply a reminder of a different future that might have been? No one outside the inner circle knows for certain. What's clear is that decades after losing the succession battle, Kim Jong-nam's name still carried weight. And perhaps That was the real problem.